Is this just fantasy? Indeed so. We are back with Tolkien's World for part two. We're going to get into the illustrations in this volume that deal with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. No need for preamble, let's just get into it. So, interestingly enough, for our Fellowship of the Ring section, we're going to start with Inger Edelfelt and the Long Expected Party, which is a really awesome illustration of Bilbo's 111th birthday with all of these assorted hobbits. And this is the kind of illustration that I really love, which is just full of personality and touches that nod to the story, not just the present moment, but the greater story of just the world of Tolkien. And I just love all of these different hobbits in this image. Just eating their feast. We know hobbits love their eating. And these little kid hobbits screwing around at this party. And yeah, it's very indicative of what we would see in the film, I think, of just this boisterous party of Bilbo's and him under the great tree here. And I just love it. I think it's really a fun image, and everywhere you look you're going to see something interesting or something fun or just great characterization. And here of course we have Bilbo in the center and kids playing with fireworks maybe back here. And no say as to if any of these people are Frodo and his pals. Who knows? Maybe this is Frodo down here, or maybe they're off to the side. Who knows? But it doesn't really matter. You can add that to your own headcanon for this image. Here's an amazing image of Frodo and Gandalf. This is post the party, post the revelation of the ring. This is before Gandalf truly knows the nature of the ring. I believe this is just Frodo has the ring now, and Gandalf becomes curious about it. And I, of course, am in love with it because it's Alan Lee. It has that soft Alan Lee touch, the warmth of the fire. You can feel it. And just the soft touch of these faces and these figures. There's a reason that Alan Lee was brought on to be a production designer on the film and a concept artist. Is he has a very strong connection with these characters, with this world, and bringing it to a thoughtful life. The great Ted Naismith again. Frodo and company embarking across the Shire and the Green Country. And again, Ted Naismith just shows his gift for naturalism here. He depicts this as if it's a real place, as if he's going off a reference. And he may be, but if he isn't, it feels very authentic. It feels like he has studied places like this before. Seen trees like this and forests like this and clouds like this. It all feels very lived in. And I feel like there could have been a hypothetical version of The Lord of the Rings with Ted Naismith as one of the chief production designers, because his vision feels like a real place. Ted Naismith again as the company here leaves the Shire. And it's hard to say who is who here, but I would wager to guess that Frodo and Sam are possibly these two in front, and Merry and Pippin are there in the back. But I'm more in love with the atmosphere of this image, more so than the depictions specifically of the characters themselves. It feels dreary, it feels like a rain is coming, and it's a little bit of a coldness to the air. And it's fitting as this is depicting them leaving the Shire. And I think that is a great crossroads into less comfortable worlds. Now here we get to some real Tolkien lore here with Tom Bombadil, a figure that's, I guess, sort of controversial. Some people really love it. Some people hate it because it seems like it's just a random thing. I'm deep within the I love Tom Bombadil group. I think it's a fascinating character. I think it's fitting for a fantastical world to have mysterious, fantastical figures. And like I said in the video about my Tolkien illustrations that I did during October in 2023, I am of the belief that Tom Bombadil represents the positive side of a unknowable entity. So where Lovecraft's Cthulhu or Yog-Sothoth or what have you is a chaotic evil entity that is unknowable and is completely outside of the realm that they live in, I think Tom Bombadil represents chaotic good. He is chaotic, for sure, but he is, of course, good. He does good when he can, but he's not so good that he's reliable against, say, the One Ring or Sauron himself. But enough about my theories. Let's get back to Roger Garland's illustration of Tom Bombadil rescuing the hobbits from Old Man Willow, which Old Man Willow looks real funky and weird, and I love it. I love the hint of arms here, the bending of these trees, and yeah, the suggestion of Bombadil back here. It's just a really cool illustration, and I really love Roger Garland's style. I can almost see the pen and ink version of this as well. It's interesting lines, interesting shapes, and it just feels outside of the realm of reality, which I think is fitting for Lord of the Rings. I think there can be some unreality to it. And I'm also comfortable with things being very realistic and atmospheric. Here we go, Ted Naismith again with the Barrow Wight. And the Barrow Downs is something missing from film adaptations, or at least the Peter Jackson film adaptation, as well as Tom Bombadil. And I think it's something that is dark and mysterious and is just a fun, creepy sequence. I love this image of Frodo rescuing his friends from the Barrow Wight. And I love just the Barrow Wight's reduced to this creepy long arm coming for them. Lying there as if they're dead and buried like the ancient soldiers that are buried in the Barrow Downs. That image really stuck out to me as a kid. And I've always wanted to create something creepy like this. And here we have a adaptation or interpretation of Luthien Tinuviel, and I believe this is part of a poem or a song that Aragorn sings, and it is really delicate and beautiful and lovely, and I would expect nothing less from Alan Lee. I just love how she fades into the background and fades back into it again. This is very reminiscent of a friend of mine's artwork, actually, who I will share at a later time because she does very fantasy-inspired artwork, but this is very reminiscent of her work. It's just a gorgeous image. I don't know what else to say. Here we have Carol Emery Phoenix depicting the attack on Weathertop, and this is something really interesting. It's completely stylistically unlike all the others that we've seen so far, and there's something really engaging about how she depicts the shadow form of the ring wraiths, specifically here the Witch King. I would assume so because of his crown. But then again, they were all kings, so this may not be the Witch King. But she's showing his Morgul blades, and of course the stabbing of it by Frodo, and the injury through which he will incur, or I guess right before the injury. And yeah, Look at this crazy face. This feels like it should be a book cover. There's just something interesting about the style of it. Here we have Robert Goldsmith on the road to Rivendell. And there's a lot of illustrations of Tolkien's work that are simply the landscape. And I think it's just the world he paints seems very real, but also seems mythic and ancient and wonderful. And I understand people just wanting to depict the world as it is. And there is a very great fondness of the natural world in all of Tolkien's writing. Of course, we have Aragorn or Strider up here. And we have the hobbits. Slowing things up, maybe. It's really lovely. Here we have the stone trolls, as depicted by Alan Lee. A great image, to be sure, and an iconic moment in both The Hobbit and in The Fellowship, as those two stories cross over into each other, you might say. Or just another moment when they cross over into each other. And I've always loved how he has a lot of personality into these trolls' faces, because they are, of course, having a conversation when they are frozen to death, I guess you could say. And, of course, other trolls through along the way seem a lot more bestial, and these seem to have a little bit more personality. So I really like that he gives these faces some life, some animus, some character, as they were characters, not just monsters. And I like seeing our folks sitting here amongst them. Here, of course, is Ted Naismith depicting an iconic moment in The Fellowship, which is the saving of Frodo from the Black Riders by way of elf magic, and turning the very river itself into a charging force. Just a beautiful moment and an exciting moment and a very cool magical moment, and I think perfectly depicted. It is a moment where they're both pursuing as well as being taken out. And poor little Frodo here just marveling at what's happening. Just really incredible. And also a very interesting depiction of the Black Riders here as not just fully cloaked creatures, but almost skeletal in nature. They're almost cadaverous in nature. Now we got to something really interesting. This is a depiction of Saruman by Tony Galudi. And what an interesting style. It's very cartoony, very D&D, if you will. And that's probably the reason that I really like it. And I just love that he's Saruman, but he's not just dressed in white. He is, as Gandalf calls him, Saruman the Wise, Saruman Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors. And I just love his crazy bracers, this crazy collar. I love the shape of this window and his palantir here, and just like wizardy shit. I don't know. I think it's fun and fantastical, and I wish that more fantasy art kept this fun spirit. It doesn't have to be dour and serious all the time. It can be over the top and fun. Here we have a great depiction of the Fellowship trying to climb the mountain, but unable to because of an avalanche. Impeccably depicted here by Ted Naismith, and Gandalf trying to hold it off and protect his friends. It's a great dramatic moment, and I also love how long this panel is, or this, I say panel because I'm a comic guy, how long this composition is, and all these dangerous looking icicles down here. It's just a very dramatic image, and I love it. Great use of negative space. Here's Alan Lee, and I think a very famous image of his of them trying to find the entrance to Moria. And yeah, he's got his work cut out for him. Any artist does when they are trying to depict just a large group of people and have everybody be distinct, everybody be there. And yeah, I just really enjoy the gentleness of an Alan Lee painting. Now he gets that focal point in there. I use the light, I think. Here it is, folks. John Howe's great contribution to the world of Tolkien art as well as to the Peter Jackson films. This is his depiction of Gandalf. And this painting, as far as I'm aware, is still missing. It went missing in an exhibition, I think, back in the 90s or maybe the 80s, and it's never been seen since. But it is this image that Peter Jackson posted up on the board for his production crew and for even John Howe as he worked on the films and said, "This is Gandalf. This is the look that we are going for." And yeah, his kind of bluish hat, how his robes and cape fall, his sword, the style of beard, the fierceness in this face, the walking stick. I think that they styled up the walking stick still, but I really love this image. I love also that it's subtly raining. There's this great mist, and he's determined. He is on his way somewhere, and the world that he's heading into is vague and mysterious. But for a wizard, it's what you'd expect. Just an amazing depiction of character. Here we have Galadriel's mirror with another Alan Lee image, and Frodo and Sam gazing into Galadriel's mirror and seeing what they will see. And a very lovely adaptation of Galadriel, and of course very influential on what we would see in the films, as well as all of this. All those natural forms being put into their structures. It's a very Alan Lee thing to do for the elves. I love this maze of thick brush that these people have to wander through, and I also love the only figure that we can see. And I just think this is a great image, period, of the struggle that the Fellowship have to go through, as depicted by Alan Lee, of course, and it is of just the difficulty of their journey. We're back with another Tony Galudi, and here's the Tower of Barad-dûr, and very industrial looking, wouldn't you say? But it ought to, because that's essentially what they represent. Here we have one of the Black Riders and a few of the fell beasts there, and just a great shine here and very round looking. I feel like it's airbrushed, like that's the material that he's using, just the softness of it all. Very interesting take on it, and I think very accurate to the feeling of that Barad-dûr has. Of course, here's a Roger Garland illustration of the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. And we have this epic moment of Gandalf being swept off the bridge by the flaming whip of the Balrog. The Fellowship helpless to stop him from falling. And of course, the orcs on the other side of the chasm. Love the green of this image. It's a strong choice, and I think it really works. Also love the weird unreality, the fluidity of these flames, of that flaming whip. And of course the monstrosity of these goblins, or orcs, or whatever they are. Here you go, Ted Naismith's take of the Balrog. Very demonic looking. He's not embellishing big wings on it, necessarily. It's just like, yeah, fiery demon. And of course, stalwart Gandalf here in front. Love that shadow. Of course, the the twin points of light from Gandalf here. And all the goblins in the back here. The light. Just, it's an imposing image. It's epic, as the scale of this conflict should be. And here we've already reached the end of the Fellowship and the beginning of the Two Towers, with Aragorn saying goodbye to Boromir. And yeah, it's a very lovely image. I love the detail of the white hand of Sauron. I love the detail of the white hand of Saruman here on the shield, as these dead Uruk-hai are lying around. And they're very human-looking armor. I really like it. The detail on the mail is really nice here. And of course, yeah, on Boromir's belt here, all the arrows in them. It's a very much like it's a combination of a depiction of Saint Sebastian as well as a Pietà here, with Aragorn holding Boromir. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment depicted very elegantly, even with all this gruesomeness around. Really love it. And here we have a depiction by John Howe of the Uruk-hai. Very imposing, but I also love that we get this sinewy back of this one, and that they are mostly uncovered in armor. And I think that's even scarier. It's like they have no fear of your attempts to deflect them. They are intimidation incarnate. Here we have a depiction of Welling Hall, the home of Treebeard. And Treebeard's looking pretty sinewy, pretty human-y, not very tree-like, but we're going to let that slide because there's a giant, hilariously big table here for Treebeard with big vats of whatever Treebeard eats or drinks, and Treebeard stuff here, and Merry and Pippin like, what the fuck? But hey, they're out of the rain, even though being in the rain looks like it's pretty awesome. Look how beautiful these colors are. Ted Naismith does it again. Although, again, very interesting that he didn't really dip too much into Treebeard's tree-like nature, because I feel like I feel like the tree folk, the Ents, ought to look pretty much like trees so that their existence can remain hidden. And here's a great depiction by Alan Lee of the searching Fangorn for the hobbits and for any trail of them, and just love how dense he makes it. He's clearly studied very dense forests. And a great depiction of, we have Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas kind of hiding there in the back. Really wonderful. Here's an interesting picture of Inger Edelfelt doing Legolas. Love the lichen growths on the rock here, the little leaf emblem on his belt. The little stylistic design touches are really nice here. But it's hard to imagine, or hard to think of this. It's hard to think of Legolas and think really black hair. But to each their own when it comes to what they picture, especially pre teach their own, especially pre-Peter Jackson, on what these characters look like. Because I will say, ever since then, I imagine there's scarcely been an adaptation of Legolas that didn't look at least a little like Orlando Bloom. The Glittering Caves of Aglarond. I believe this is in the back of Helm's Deep. These glittering caves back here. And good old Gimli being shown them and being amazed. And it's just clearly drawn from so many different real cave systems, and just like all the amazing caves are right here in this one place. Really amazing. Thank you, Ted Naismith. There's a really great sense of scale in this image. Just really wonderful. Here we have a John Howe image that's definitely influential on what the looks of these things ended up being in the Peter Jackson film. I'm going to keep referencing the films because they're so ubiquitous, and also because I really love them. And John Howe worked on them, and his Fell Beast is probably the reason that the fell beasts in the film look the way they do, and why and why Barad-dûr looks the way it does. And of course, a black rider here on it. Yeah, love this kind of weird, gross growth stuff coming in on this building. And of course, this flappy tongue. Here we have Inger Edelfelt depicting the dead marshes, the faint ghost of dead men. Really lovely. It's lovely, especially for being dead people. And the disgust in his face is really wonderful. The lack of disgust in Gollum's face is also great. Really great touch. Here we have an Oliphant. Because, I don't know, that's just a cool Tolkien thing. He's like, we're going to include elephants in here, except they're even bigger. And I love all these guys down here. Very medieval looking, these folks. I love, all of them are scattering from this Oliphant. It's great. It's a big elephant. John Howe depicting Shelob here with Sam charging at Shelob. And it's a gross, monstrous spider. And of course, poor Frodo wrapped up here. What more do you want? It's just such a great, tense, action-packed image. I love it. Now we come all the way to Return of the King. We have Minas Tirith here. In very fascinating John Howe depiction of this place. It's cutting up into the clouds. It's like something from a dream. And yeah, very well studied turrets here, and just it all feels right, especially the light on those clouds back there. Really lovely. Here comes Roger Garland again with this really interesting depiction of the Witch King. Love this these crazy buggy eyes. This clearly, it looks like a featherless bird. It's just really gross. The simplification of what I'm assuming is Minas Tirith back there. It feels like like a surreal landscape. And I think that's what I respond to the most, is it feels in some way surrealist. And I think that's okay for a fantasy world. Just love this weird, gross beak-like thing. And yeah, his flails flailing. Interesting. So interesting. Here's another great depiction of the Battle of Pelennor Fields. And you have Oliphants back here. Just this mob of pikes and banners and horses and orcs and men and all that shit. It's chaotic. It's amazing. I love it. Here's Sam going to Frodo's rescue, you might say. And just, the unpleasant, unrelenting atmosphere of Mordor here. Really well depicted by Robert Goldsmith. Lovely, lovely watercolor painting. It's also grotesque. Cirith Ungol. I love how it blends into the rocks. It's hewn straight from the mountain, but it's unnatural. Feels like it doesn't belong there, which is right for that. What a lovely depiction. Just a lovely quality of painting. Always going to love some Alan Lee. And again, Alan Lee depicting Mount Doom. And I love the great quality of this with the peak up here. And then we come all the way down here. And we see our figures in here, I believe. But then, really, we need to pay attention right here with Gollum coming swiftly after. It's really quite a remarkable piece because most of it is just volcanic rock. But it's dramatic. John Howe and his great depicting of orcs and the poor hobbits marching along with them. Oof. Great. I don't know. I love these horns here. And just the armor, the monstery faces. And this is the final image for this section. It is an image of something that we didn't really get much of in the films, which is the Scouring of the Shire, which is to say that even in the poor Shire, we see the effects of the war. And thankfully, though, the returning heroic hobbits are here to put a stop to Saruman and his evil ways. Yeah, love it. Thank you, Inger Edelfelt. Although it's interesting that it's credited as Return of the Shadow, but, you know, we'll get into other things Tolkien in the next video. Oh, yeah, another great depiction of Saruman here. He's more or less in white robes, and he's looking like he's been caught for the last time. And you can tell that's Pippin because he's wearing the Gondorian shield there. And that's Merry. I imagine that this is Bilbo. And I'm guessing this is Sam maybe back here? Because I think this is Wormtongue. And then Saruman. So yeah, that is our end of section 2, part 2 of this book. And next time, we're going to be doing part 3, which is the other works of Tolkien.